So without further ado, so I actually wanted to stumble upon this video, which I believe is incredibly uh, informative. So this is done by CNA Insider, and they might be a news company based in Singapore, if I'm not mistaken. Oh yeah, it actually says that right here, MediaCore. So yeah, let's take a look.
You might have bumped into them,
It was really good money. I have to carry on this.
I have done 1.5
interacted
times
with them,
speed.
They might be uncomfortable. I feel a lot like loneliness.
or even worked with them.
I honestly don't think that we have it easy. The rising of costs is just something that we couldn't expect.
But do we really see them? What are they hiding? This is Beyond.
So by the way, this is a focus on millennials, specifically on millennials in Singapore who are doing this buy now, pay later model and how they're using it. There's some dangerous things here that you can really see spiral out of control, or it could potentially spiral out of control. And to some degree, it seems very almost fatalistic in the sense where they have almost, I won't say completely have given up on their future, but you can see there's a very narrow sightedness of just living now. And I think that buy now, pay later model really targets that. It really targets that individual. Is it predatory? I don't know if I could say that, but there is a target audience. So it's, and this is a general rule in general, right? If someone wants your attention, they want your attention for a reason. Maybe they want to sell you something. Maybe they want to inform you of something, and it could be for your good. Likely, it also has a benefit for them. But even if it is for your good to some degree, you want to be careful because you're not just being reached, by accident. You're likely being reached for a specific purpose. And these companies, they do tons of research. They know the psychology. They know what makes you tick. They know what entices you. They know what you want. They know what you believe about yourself, whether it's true or not. And you better believe that they're going to use that to their advantage.
Insight.
Right now, a simple cai png already costs close to $4. I'll get like 2 veggie, 1 meat.
My grocery bill has increased by 20%.
My goodness. I can relate.
Rent is going to increase by about 15%, which translates to around $300.
So date nights, we usually try to stay at home. Of course, I can't do that all the time, right? Later I'm gonna work with a friend. So whenever I take my girlfriend out for meals, right, I will try to search for deals, like 1 for 1 or even like 20 to 30% discounts.
Yeah, it's come to the point where if you're not trying to buy food or anything on a discount, it's like you're really hurting yourself. Sometimes it just seems like a convenience thing, but it's become more of a necessity to just really manage, our finances at this point. Also, just to double check, these guys are in Singapore, and I believe I could double check, but I'm pretty sure the Singapore dollars at least yeah. So oh my goodness, I checked earlier today, and Canadian dollar was 2 cents above. Now it's 1 cent above. So one Singapore dollar is more or less equivalent to the Canadian dollar.
Okay, I got a car. Let's go.
It's a Friday,
Hello. Hello. Diner, Sherry Diner.
and I'm hanging out with a different crowd, millennials.
How often do you go out to socialize? Weekly or every other week, we will check out like what new restaurants and bars. We spend about 100-ish per pax for dinner and drinks.
Ooh. Bi-weekly 200, probably doable depending on how much you make and how you budget. If you're going out 100 per week, that's too much. That's like that could be $400, and again, Singapore dollars, Canadian dollars, roughly equivalent. My so I have a grocery, unless if they somehow don't do groceries, but I doubt it. My grocery bill for the month, and sometimes I go under because I'm at home. I give myself roughly $275 for groceries a month, and I give myself 125 for eating out and all that stuff. So, and sometimes I have like a $30 potluck budget, mainly because that can be used necessarily for more so generosity, not just for pleasure. But yeah, so roughly $400 allocated to food, of which $275 goes to groceries. I don't always hit that amount, and I usually don't go over. And same thing with dining out, 125. Sometimes I don't hit that amount. Usually don't go over, but sometimes I have, but I'm a lot more strict with it these days. So, and of course, if I want to, I could always allocate that money to one or the other. So it doesn't feel bad because I know that $400 is what I have for food. But with that in mind, even if I were to go out every week, no way am I spending $100 each week on food that I buy out. No way.
Yeah. And to To be honest, the amount is quite okay for me because it includes drinks. We came by private hire car just now, and you told me the car that that's actually your preferred mode of transport. How much do you spend a month? I actually take Grab like 99% of the time when I have to leave my house. It used to be...
So I think Grab, I might be wrong, I think Grab is equivalent to Uber.
Closer to 700-800 a month. I'm trying to cut down. I just got used to the convenience. Like, I cannot imagine having to wake up 2.5 hours earlier now anymore.
So it's become part of your lifestyle.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a real concern of like needing to like transportation for work. I assume it's for work, not pleasure. Yeah, an extra 2.5 hour commute. I would definitely take a more expensive option unless if I really, really like it. Unless if I was doing that, the Dave Ramsey schedule, rice and beans, beans and rice. I would try to find a way. I don't know if something else is possible, but yeah, if 2.5 hours is the next best thing, grab.
What about savings? Do you put money aside?
Yeah, I try to put like the recommended amount, which is about 20% of the income. I feel like I've done pretty well, like ever since I graduated. But recently, my dog fell sick, so he basically wiped out like most of my savings.
I spent an...
Yeah, so she had savings, and I assume that maybe that the emergency with the dog came from their emergency fund that she may have had, or maybe she had a specific fund for her dog. Really good. That's what it's supposed to do, but it is unfortunate that the money comes from there, but that's the point of preparing it in the first place. So always highly recommend making an emergency fund. The emergency fund, you really want it to cover comfortably, in my opinion, comfortably covering your costs of 3 to 6 months having no income.
Day with Joey to look at where her money goes. Apart from whining and dining at private hire cars. So what's next?
I'm going for a Muay Thai class, so I have a personal trainer who helps me stay consistent with like my fitness.
Throw in her groceries and other daily necessities. Joey spends up to 3,000 Singapore dollars a month.
3,000 Singapore dollars a month. So yeah, so again, roughly $3,000 a month in expenditure. I don't know if that's just rent, groceries, things like physical exercise, whatnot. Because if so, that isn't too bad. Of course, it depends on income and everything else, and of course, debt and how quickly she's able to get out of debt. But yeah, I spend a comparable amount if you include money that goes to saving. If that doesn't include saving, then that is still a little bit more on the higher end.
See, her monthly pay isn't fixed. Like many her age, Joey has chosen to be a gig worker.
Oh,
which means
gig
while
worker,
she's her
okay,
own boss,
nice.
her pay fluctuates according to the projects she gets. So, what's really beyond the surface? In the US, 6 in 10 young adults are worried they will never meet their financial goals due to the rising costs of
In the
living.
US.
In the UK, inflation and slow wage growth are forcing some young adults to move back home. So, how are our young adults
Never
faring
left.
in Singapore? My morning coffee with milk at the hawker center is up about 10 cents. Groceries for my family of 5 is $53 more a month now. If I choose to eat out, my plate of chicken rice is up 30 cents.
Oh, that's good.
Airfares within Asia are projected to increase by 5.4% this year.
And this is specifically in Asia.
And a full tank of petrol
For Singapore.
costs me at least $22 more today.
I think I'd actually like to go one day.
Inflation in Singapore hit 7% in 2022, the highest in almost 14 years.
14% in 2022. 14% in 2022. I was playing around with this earlier when I was trying to buy my phone. I was comparing because the iPhone, I think 8 when it first came out, which was 2017, was $699 for base price. So I was comparing, I'm like, does the iPhone just keep up with inflation? It does not just keep up with inflation. I'm just telling you that now. This is in Canada. She said from, I think, was it 2020 to 2021 or 20, I think it was just 2021. So it should be between 2020 and 2021, which I think it was actually the worst year for inflation. Yeah, so the percent change here to 2.2, that should be common. Let me double check 2021 to 2022 then. Yeah, so maybe it was, 6.66. That's a lot worse. Let me just double check. Let's do 2019 to 2020. Okay. And then let's do 2022 to 2023. This should be more closer to 3%, right? 4.3. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So the bad year was definitely 2022 because the difference between 2022 and 2021 is when you had the largest leap. Let me just double check what you said.
14 years. Inflation in Singapore hit 7% in 2022, the highest in almost.
Oh, 7%. Sorry, I doubled that.
Inflation in Singapore hit 7% in 2022, the highest in almost 14 years.
7% in 2022. So you see, that's only a little bit above, the difference with Canada because it was 6.66% between 2021 and 2022. Sorry, I think I said 14. That's way off. It's half of that. 7%. Still pretty bad though.
Christopher Gee is a keen observer of Singapore's economy. Inflation has spiked.
So by the way, what is going on there?
In the last few years, why is that so?
Historically, Singapore's inflation rate has ranged around about 2 to 3%. In 2021, when the COVID measures were starting to be lifted, inflation picked up a little bit, and when the economy started to open up completely, of course, inflation has risen even further from there, and we're running around about 5, 6, and we've seen a print of even 7%. The source of that inflation is complex. We've had the war in Ukraine, lots of supply shocks from all around the region. Singapore, of course, imports all of its food. Another contributing factor to inflation over the last few years is the amount of government support. So in Singapore, there was the big pack.
Yeah, so that's something that people often don't really take into account, but it's, yeah, temporary pleasure when you get a lot of government relief or government support, but long-term pain. There's obviously a reason, and there's, of course, they're experts, and ideally they know what they're doing, and they're doing their best with the best interest in mind for everyone in the country, of course. But yeah, by providing that relief, it may help families to get by in that meantime. And for some people, that's all they can do. They can't even think about in the future because they're just trying to get food on the table. Completely understandable. The issue is that overall, by supporting everyone at the same time with that amount, so in Canada, think of the CSB during the COVID lockdown, and think of CSB was for businesses, forgot what the student one was, which I took, by the way. Um, Incredible help while we weren't able to work, or most of us weren't able to work. But the issue was that would really drive up inflation, right? And so we were able to make it through that year, that summer, but then when it really came down to work again, jobs were cut. Jobs actually did come back a little bit, but then kind of got cut again. And then inflation was really high. Wages couldn't keep up unless you were in maybe tech, but then that was really inflated, to be honest. It wasn't something that was sustainable. And I think that's why they're hit the heaviest, like usual, with cuts. So the issue is like, in the meantime, yes, that extra, couple $100 or thousands, whatever it may be that you may get, helps in the meantime, but you suffer for it for a very, very, very long time. So as always, like, if you have that privilege, just be in a better spot when that tragedy happens, when that hardship happens, then yeah, like, you're in a better place in the first place. But as it gets worse, it's only going to punish those who need the support all the more. It'll be nice, and of course, there's a lot to this. I'm not an economist by any sense, but it'll be nicer if the focus would always be to keep inflation low, and that way, hopefully, your money goes a longer way. But if there's no relief, then who cares if inflation is 2% or 3%? You're not really gonna be able to do well enough to see it, benefit you at that price. So I think it's always a tight balance, and I think of course, Bank of Canada and the Fed should always be doing their best to keep that in check. But I think things did get a little off the rails during the COVID lockdown, and it was the perfect storm. People weren't able to work, and which would, of course, dramatically affect inflation. But then there's also government relief, so both those were added on top of each other. And of course, fear in the market. So a lot of people just fled the stock market as well.
Another contributing factor to inflation over the last few years is the amount of government support. So in Singapore, there was the big package in 2020, and that was followed up in 2021, 2022. And in fact, you can think about this very simply as those CDC vouchers that we all got. That all contributes to an increase in the money supply. And with that additional money in people's pockets, they are able to pay for that limited pool of goods and services, and therefore prices rise.
Which groups are worse off when it comes to inflation?
The young generally don't have that much income. And today, a lot of
We already knew that. You didn't need to say that.
young people have aspirations. We are concerned about the young, their spending.
Yeah, so this age range you could see here, and I love that I really love media companies like this. Sometimes people look at them so bad, but I just love seeing stats and seeing it cited. Amazing. So this age range, 2024, 25 to 29, see, this is their monthly medium income, which I'm going to say that's for a median, that's actually really, really good. That's really, really good. Again, considering that the Singapore dollars are nearly 1 to 1 with Canadian dollars, that is really, that's actually, yeah, that's better than I thought. Huh.
And the impact of inflation on them. Some people might have to resort to borrowing, unfortunately.
How are young adults grappling with the rising cost of living? The Institute of Policy Studies and Talking Point conducted a survey late last year. We polled over 850 Singaporeans aged between 21 and 29 to find out how they are managing their finances. For the purpose of this show, we'll term them millennials. Most respondents, 9 in 10, say they are personally affected by rising costs. 3 in 10 say they spend more than they earn.
Oof. And that's where they'll say, and they're right, by the way. They're even if they may be insensitive as they say this, Dave Ramsey, etc. They're always right. You shouldn't be spending more than what you earn. It doesn't math out, right? It doesn't make sense unless there's some loophole that we're missing. You should never be spending more than you're earning. Of course, unless if it's an emergency and that's what you literally need to survive, then you're able to do that for that time period. But for the most part, if you're able to, and most people are able to do probably far more than they initially hold themselves responsible to, but at the same time, there is a ceiling based on just your circumstances. You shouldn't be paying more than you earn. And there's times where, I think I was probably, actually, was I? Maybe not, but pretty close, right? Or if I did, I was dipping a little bit into money that I already knew that I could take from, but it wasn't, the most sustainable, and it was likely for a reason of, let's say, paying down debt. But yeah, for the most part, like you never want to be doing that, and you want to identify that quickly and turn from that as soon as possible if it is non-discretionary spending, and well, they'll speak for themselves.
Worry about money constantly. Honey is paying off a student loan and a housing loan. Her housing and development board flat will be ready in 3 years. That's also when she plans to get married. Are you on track for payments for your large expenses? Yes or no?
No, my HDB is around 300,000, and for my school loan, I'm left 15,000.
$300,000 for a flat.
And it will just cut.
$15,000 in student loans. That is, again, I don't know the average for Singapore, but in terms of just dollar amount, that is really good compared to Canada and the US because average student will have a lot more in student loans. I had a lot more in student loans. I had double that actually.
Automatically in
From bachelor's and master's, I don't know what her credentials are.
credit card.
You are paying off your student loan using your credit card.
Yes.
Okay. And do you pay on time for your credit card?
Yes, but
Oh, so again, I don't know the interest rates in Singapore on student loans, and I don't know, I assume it's really hard to get out student loan debt the same way it is in Canada. But one thing I do know about credit cards is that probably globally, they probably are roughly around the same percent ranges of 90% to maybe 22% on average, or 23, 24, even 25% average. I really doubt her student loans had an interest rate of anywhere close to that amount. So unless she has a really good credit card rate for interest, I mean, maybe that's what she had to do to not, default on payments or something. And in the meantime, I don't know. Um, but yeah, yeah.
some days we are missed.
Do you manage to save?
Um,
If I want to ask you to be honest with yourself, what do you think is the main
Usually, so yeah, usually you would probably you've seen like Caleb Hammer or someone else, like you would maybe you could recommend like taking a line of credit to pay off credit card because the interest rate should be lower and you're able to um also help build up your credit score by doing so. I don't think this situation called for that, but again, I'm no expert and I don't know the full details, so I can't give a qualified response. Probably can't even give a qualified response in general, just a response.
why you haven't been able to save as much as you you want to.
There are some things which I feel like I'm distracted by, and peer pressure, like your friends having the same makeup product, the same bag, and you kind of like feel like you missed out. Online doesn't really help because everyone is promoting everything.
They're making it too easy.
Yeah, and it's like tempting.
Yep. Everything's promoted to you. It's tempting, by the way. It's meant to do that. And it's meant to also feel up envy, right? You're looking at what other people have, and they may even try to tell you to, like you deserve to spoil yourself. And by having that sense of entitlement, you're like, yeah, I do deserve to spoil myself. So let me harm my future by spending more than I make. Again, you're not thinking it through that way, but just running on emotion in the meantime, that's what you tend to do. And they know it.
Shop more and
They're hoping
get
for
more
it.
foundations in the same shade.
You know what I'm hearing, girls? The online shopping.
Yeah, it's an addiction, I would say. The unnecessary spendings because there are extra things.
Self-aware.
I would feel good after spending it.
Give me an example of a very
Feel good initially, but I bet she doesn't feel too good about it now that she's trying to pay it off and worrying about her future. It's tough. We all do it to a degree.
unnecessary items that make you feel good.
Usually higher end makeup, around $300.
How often do you do that? To plunk down $300 for makeup, for example?
I will try not to make it every month, but it's becoming to be an every month thing.
I think it's fair to say that Honey spends.
Yeah, like even if you have a fun or play budget of $300 a month, that is all going to makeup. And I know she's doing a lot more, for fun.
All of the take-home
hobby
pay.
or
Every month, she also puts at least $900 on her credit card on shopping and eating out.
Again, 1,000 or 900 a month is fine on the credit cards once you pay it off. I do that on my credit cards, but I paid off, and it's covering things that are essential.
Using credit cards is the norm nowadays, but I wonder if Honey is unwittingly getting herself into more debt.
Oh, it's funny, of course. Talking phone.
This game console didn't cost me anything. I own another brand of game console, and I swapped it with a friend so that both of us.
Ooh, was that Final Fantasy? It is. I was not able to tell that. Yeah, I'm a gamer too, and so like I spend money on games, and precisely one of the reasons why I didn't go for PlayStation. I'm pretty sure it's a PS5, unless it was a PS4. One of the reasons why I went for Xbox and not a PlayStation is because of money. There are a lot of ways to save money if you're gaming as an Xbox gamer, as a console gamer in general compared to PC. But there's a lot of ways in which you're able to save, and it really serves my purpose because if I only have, an hour or two or whatever to play on a weekday or every other weekday or whatever the case is, it's a lot easier to do with low commitment rather than when I used to PC game, play MMOs, which would devote, it's like having a second job, right? There's a lot more fulfilling things you could do in life rather than spending that much time on games. And so you really want to, at least for me, I found it was effective to reduce the amount of time I'd play, or if I'm playing a longer session, it's on a day where my responsibilities are already done and, I'm not disregarding responsibilities or people. So like a weekend where I know that I actually have time to do so, or like a Friday night when, again, I know I have time to do so. But yeah, and with an Xbox, like one, the price was significantly cheaper for the Xbox Series S, but then I'm also able to, get Game Pass, get games, essentially for a really, really, really good price, and you keep up with that new feeling because new games are added all the time. You don't really feel like you're missing out, and if there's a big game you really want to buy, you just buy that one big game, or those couple big games a year, assuming you actually have time to play them. And another hack is that I don't pay for my Game Pass.
So that both of us can try new games without spending extra money.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Almost all the furniture in my house is secondhand. This
Really good.
mattress is
Really good. That's something I'm really trying to learn too. I just bought a Papa San chair from Kijiji for a reduced price. When I looked, I really wanted one of those chairs. Looked up and saw that they could be up to 400. In fact, even way more than that, double that, triple that even. And I'm like, nope, I'm buying it secondhand. And I'm really starting to engage into the secondhand market. And not just as a consumer, but I'm also hoping to do so as a producer or supplier, like selling things that I don't use anymore rather than just throwing it out. Or I'm comfortable with giving it away if it's going to good use. But yeah, secondhand is not, you're not really missing out if you take your time.
Carousel, and my bed frame is from Facebook Marketplace. There's this shelf that I got off Facebook Marketplace as well. I searched for a really long time. So I wanted this as a divider between my bedroom and my living space. And my super huge dining table, some dining chairs, plus my fridge and my washing machine are also from Carousel. Since I didn't have the money and I had a lot of time, I just spent a lot of time looking for second-hand items instead.
She's done really, really well.
Joey started renting 2 years ago, and these second-hand deals have saved her an estimated 4,000 Singapore dollars.
Oh, renting, okay.
I don't really budget religiously, but I pretty much spend about...
Ooh, she makes a lot. So that's, maybe I'm overestimating, but yeah, she makes a lot. So there's a lot you can do with that income.
5K to around...
So, okay.
On the set.
3,000 on necessities. Yeah,
And
rent is probably eating up most of that.
eating out, groceries and like transport and shopping, and I pay about 1,000 for my rent. I'm sharing it with someone else.
Oh, rent wasn't in necessities. Which it's okay to separate them, but now I'm wondering, food, going out, transportation. I don't know if all those are necessities. Because now she's already, if she makes 5,500 after tax. All right, sorry about that. I actually had my computer go and say that I was full of space. So I'm like, how is that even possible? Then I remember I used Final Cut Pro, and there's always issues to work around. Anyways, let's continue with this video, and I'll try to be pausing a lot less.
And I spend about $300 on insurance, and I try to save about 1,000 a month.
Okay,
In a joint
good.
survey by the Institute of Policy Studies and
really
Talking Point, 3 in 10 young adults between the ages of 21 and 29 say they rely on credit as a means to cope. Lines of credit include credit cards. Almost anyone can apply for one. You just need to earn at least 2,500 Singapore dollars a month, and you can borrow up to 2 months of your income. Apart from credit cards, there is another line of credit that's even easier to get.
Really interesting. I thought they would have given it out for people who make a lot less.
It's very seamless, convenient, and very easy to use. And I do need an eyebrow pencil, so let me show you. I enter the app, and I search out the makeup shop that I want to find my brow definer, and I click checkout, and automatically Atomi splits my payments.
Buy now, pay later is just as its name suggests. This payment method allows Honey to pay for a third of her purchase upfront, which is $15 today, another $15 a month later, and the last $15 a month
again,
after
if this is within
there are
budget,
no extra or hidden
that's
costs.
okay.
So I bought this jacket a month ago using Atomi, my makeup products. This perfume, hydrating spray,
But the
cleanser,
issue is that it's made
mask.
so you don't stay within budget.
I've been using it by now
What's
pay later
another
since 2 years ago.
$15,
There's
right?
other options. Instead of just Atomi, I would say Grab Pay Later, but Grab Pay Later is more for my rights. My favorite thing about buy now pay later is that
Grab pay
I don't have
later.
to pay.
So, again, I don't know if Uber have. Oh my goodness. They're getting everything.
One go during the month itself, so I
have no
can really
idea.
split my costs. Whereas credit card payments is a monthly payment, and if you miss that payment, it would incur charges.
The use of buy now, pay later, or BNPL services, has been on the rise. In 2020, there were 114 million Singapore dollars worth of transactions recorded. In 2021, that went up to a whopping 440 million Singapore dollars.
Look at that.
That's
It basically quadrupled in 1 year. And again, the calculator, right? Like, or sorry, the worst year, at least in Canada, was 2022, not 2021, because they lowered rates heavily because of COVID and its difference. But again, in this time, right, they lowered rates, at least Canada and globally, and look, they rapidly increased it. So whether it's 0% APR or whether there actually is APR with a reduced rate, they really tapped in. And you want to bet that they're still, working with this? Of course they are.
this increase in just
I wonder
1
what the
year.
number is for 2022 now.
As BNPL services become more widespread, I have to wonder if they are too good to be true. One expert feels that young adults are not as financially literate as they should be.
Would you say that younger Singaporeans are more in debt today compared to previous generations?
They definitely are more at risk
of getting into more debt compared to the previous generations.
More at
Part of
risk.
the reason is
He didn't
wide
necessarily
accessibility
answer
of
the question
different instruments
directly.
that they can get into debt with. Credit cards have been fairly utilized. Buy now pay later is also coming of age. So the issue is that when we have a scheme like buy now pay later, loan has two parts. One is the principal and the other one
He
is the
just called it a
interest.
scheme? I think he just called it a scheme.
So buy now pay later does nothing to the principal. The challenge is that there are other hidden costs that many people might not be aware of. Suppose you might not be able to make the payment for an unfortunate incident like losing your job or some other medical expenses that might come in. That might actually have an impact on the penalties that you have to pay in. That penalties act as sort of a zero interest in some sense. So even though you think
so that's another thing too. So it's not just interest increasing, but it's penalties, and the penalties act as a pseudo interest. So I mean, at the end of the day, if they were giving you full price product with no interest, they wouldn't be in the business. They wouldn't be making money. They wouldn't be sustainable. Which means in order to be sustainable, they're betting on individuals biting more they can chew or missing a payment.
free over a period of time, that might be one of the things you have to worry about. So we did a survey back in 2021. We found out that many of the young adults from 18 to 30-year-olds actually have unsustainable levels of debt. That's more than a monthly income, so between 1 and 6 month income in debt levels. To about 1 in 3 had that levels of debt.
1 to 6 months of income and debt levels. Oh.
Now, if you look at it from whether they could pay it off under the current circumstances, it might be a little challenging.
How worried should we be?
Having levels of debt which is high early on in their life might get them into a habit of taking more debt.
Yeah, so the concern isn't that they can't pay out the debt. The issue is that you're building a habit of being in debt. Bad debt, by the way. This is not good debt.
As buy now pay later services become more widespread, are they changing how an entire generation spends?
You can think of why this is so. Oh, I think it's about interest.
One of the biggest players in the market, some tough questions. Every time BNPL is mentioned, people say, oh, it's a bad thing.
Yeah, because you can think like the businesses, like they have something to gain, of course, as they should, their business, right? But that's where the concern is. Like, there's a reason why this is being heavily marketed. It's being heavily marketed to a certain demographic. Stop.
Young adults are at risk of getting into more debt today compared to previous generations due to easily accessible lines of credit. An emerging popular service, buy now, pay later.
I need to get this channel.
Assistant Professor Stephanie Lin believes that the marketing of buy now, pay later services actively targets young adults.
Yeah.
On its face, BNPL is kind of a win-win. It can help retailers sell more volume, and it can give consumers access to products that they weren't able to afford before. As BNPL services get more popular, how do you think it will impact the spending habits of young people? A lot of the messaging in the advertisements are specifically geared towards younger consumers and trying to change a little bit the mindset of the consumer so that they feel that they can engage in self-indulgent spending. If you take a look at this website, they say things like, we know what you're thinking, you feel like you've hustled hard enough for a treat.
Okay, so I don't think young people should take it when if older people say like you haven't worked hard, you don't know what hard work is, etc. I think that isn't true nor accurate. It could be true that they haven't faced, the same degree of, you know, hardship or, hustling that they have. Doesn't mean they haven't hustled. Because there's a point in your life where you were the same now. What I would agree with is if someone of an older generation was saying, hey, like, you are trying to cope with the hard work far more than we ever did, that might be something viable to say. But it's also good to consider that things aren't the same, right? Even accounting for inflation, adjusting measures, like people in our age, millennials, Gen Z, etc., have it far harder in some aspects in terms of just sheer dollar value required to buy a home and many other things that that prior generations didn't have the same difficulty with, strictly speaking, from a money perspective. There's tons of factors that go into it. So when you pull up stats, you always want to make sure you're doing multivariate analysis. So you're not just taking the stat you want and seeing it the way you want to say. You want to consider other things. But it's important enough to know that, yeah, like the fact that many are going to this as a solution, or at least initially cope, tells you that, yeah, either they actually are really being hustled hard, or they, whatever reason, believe that they are. And whether it's one or the other, they both still need to be addressed. If they are hustled hard, then what can we do for them, and what can they do if they're in a situation, and if maybe they haven't been hustled hard, but they've just been engineered or cultured and babied in such a way to think that they just have this hard knock life, then that still needs to be addressed too. But either way, they know this. Literally, we know what you're thinking. Sometimes you want things. Sometimes you feel like you've hustled enough for a treat. Sometimes you need more time saved. And these are all good things, but they come in with a little bit of a truth and they twist it.
Textbook licensing, which is basically
Which
trying
we'll
to tell
get
you
to get
it's okay, you deserve to spend a lot of money because you've done this virtuous behavior. One way they position themselves is by equating themselves with responsible spending. So saying that if you use buy now, pay later, you're spending responsibly, or you're budgeting.
That's not spending responsibly. It has nothing to do with spending responsibility. Spending responsibly means following your budget. That's what spending responsibly means. It's making a budget that makes sense for the financial goals that not just that you want, but that you need, and then sticking to it. That's what it means to be financially responsible and to spend responsibly. You're sticking to your budget, and if anything comes outside of your budget, if you're not sticking to your budget, it's for a good reason or for its emergency. And ideally, you actually would have planned for such emergencies and expenditures in your budget already, unless it's something that you actually had no feasible means to prepare for. But like I said, with my Paybright, I was able to fork around some money and make it so I can afford that $116 payment per month. So I was still following my budget. So indirectly, they do have a point in saying spend responsibly can be easy because you can still get the thing you want and still make it fit within your budget and have the appearance of spending responsibly, assuming that it was something that you could responsibly get, responsibly manage, and responsibly pay off in a responsible amount of time.
In a joint survey by the Institute of Policy Studies and Talking Point, we found that for those who use Buy Now Pay Later or BNPL services, 7 in 10 say they spend more each month now, and
Working as
6 in
intended.
10 are unable to pay their monthly installments in
Working as
full.
intended.
I'm bringing concerns about BNPL services to Atomy. It's one of the larger players in Singapore's Buy Now Pay Later scene. Its target market, millennials and Gen Zs.
The majority of our base is between 21 to 29.
I think I'm Gen Z by 1 year, unfortunately.
That accounts for more than a quarter of our users.
We've spoken to a few experts, and every time BNPL is mentioned, people say, oh, it's a bad thing. Do you think your industry deserves this reputation?
I don't believe we deserve the reputation, but then again, I am part of the industry, right? We are working with the various other organizations that offer this by launching this code of conduct, by being a regulated organization, that helps us.
So that's a good thing to say, a really political answer to give as well. So he's right to bring up that bias that he is in the industry. So of course he's gonna, like, why be in an industry that you don't morally or ethically, believe in or are willing to defend, um, unless that's your last resort, I guess. But that still isn't a right thing to do. But here he's defending uh, the fact that they have a code of conduct and they follow, which is good. But that's assuming, again, it's presupposing that the code of conduct is actually ethical, that it's good, that it's right. And to some degrees it probably is, but we know that they're not just having a target audience that just wants this, but they're actually, taking advantage of their vulnerability as well. Knowing that the repercussions can mean that they actually mess up their lives financially, at least within the code of conduct.
Hopefully to build consumer confidence in us.
Is your service encouraging people to spend and spend?
As an organization, whenever an individual is not able to pay us back the remaining 2/3 of the transaction, there's no way that we would make money as a company. So it's in our own best interest to ensure that the user is able to pay us back. We have to be quite controlled in terms of who we're giving our credit out to.
Yeah, so that's right. Same thing with credit card companies, right? Of course, there's always other ways to work around it, like consolidating debt, working with the middleman, etc. So I'm sure there's ways that they can get their money back, and there's consequences for people who don't pay it back, right? So I'm pretty sure they're far more comfortable, even with people missing payments, because they know that it's a long, it's a hardship for them. And I mean, they work on a buy now, pay later, you know, framework. Like they're used to not getting a lot of money up front and almost having the subscription model of getting money. So you think they're not going to press someone for a long period of time to get whatever extra amount they can get in interest and have them pay for a longer period of time, or to pay more with that same period?
Atomy has been very successful at that, and we have a default rate, this is meaning individuals who are unable to pay us back, that is actually very much below the industry average. The percentage of...
How long has Atomy been around for? I'm just curious now, because it's true they have that default rate, but question is how long have they been around for? The copyright is 2021, right? And so like if they've been around since 2021, I mean, oh sorry, okay, yeah. So the copyright was 2021, but they were actually founded in 2016. So they've been around for a bit. But I mean, yeah, like if it's fairly recent, like that data, I mean, it's a good stat to have. Definitely, it's something that you can use to keep going. But as you keep going, that default rate's going to change, and it's going to become more accurate. It's going to be more representative of what the actual true mean is, and whether that's higher or lower, I don't know. Um, but it also depends on how people are affected as well.
Users who have defaulted has actually decreased over time.
I'm just wondering, what is the
Oh,
impact
nice.
of a
Okay,
service?
so with their data, it's actually been going down. So that's it's likely indicative that the true mean actually is a lower number, which means this is a far more sustainable payment method than credit card, which makes sense.
On my credit history.
There is no current impact, but I think that younger users should be aware that we don't want to breed that habit of overextending just because there's no impact to their credit history at this point in time.
You said that you don't want young people to overextend themselves, but that really conflicts with the messages on your website that says indulge today, live in the moment. How do you reconcile that?
I don't necessarily think there's a conflict. The reason being is that you can enjoy and appreciate what you want now and be well within your means to do it. I don't think it's necessarily a conflicting message.
So he's right as long as it's done in moderation. The same thing we say about a lot of things like food and eating. Question is, they don't. Actually, I haven't used Otomi, but the general consensus I get is not that it's not really presented in a way to have moderation. The moderation is in that one item you buy and it being spread. But there's no moderation in purchasing. So the issue is when I open these apps, um, like shop.ca or whatever it may be, they throw everything at you because they want you to buy. They're not just trying to make you find that one thing that you need. They're trying to make you find a lot of items that you don't need as you're trying to look for that one item that you do need. And they're hoping that you just add it all up. And it's like, well, I'm paying 100 something bucks a month for a ton of items that I wanted. Is that moderation? No.
A code of conduct for BNPL providers
Okay,
kicked
that's
in late
nice.
last year. It's
Love
not
that.
mandatory, although providers will have to abide by it
That's
to get
nice.
accredited. Under the code, all fees, including late fees, are capped. Users cannot owe the BNPL company more than $2,000 at any one time.
Okay. So this is another way to have per app. Okay. Interesting. Per app. I actually like that regulation. But that already shows you that. So to some degree, there is moderation there because yeah, they need their money. I think if this limit was, more representative of what you could do with credit cards, if the rates may not be as good.
Assessment. And if they miss a
Good
payment,
default
well,
rates.
their account with that provider will be suspended.
Very
But
good.
there's nothing to stop them from using multiple providers at the moment, and it's still unclear how this could affect their credit history in the long run.
Nothing stops them from using multiple providers at the time being. So that either that means all the multiple providers are within that 2,000 limit, which is what I thought, or per app is somehow all within the same providers, which I doubt they have much option.
Honestly, no.
Good.
I do have plans of moving overseas. I'll be able to be comfortable there for a lot less.
During my parents' time, their house costs around 150,000, but house with my
Double.
fiance is already doubled, 300,000.
It's doubled. Does that keep up with the inflation? Of course it doesn't.
People would say, why not just cut
Dollars
their
to the
spending?
economy.
But that's just not my priority right now. It's just different ways people live. So yeah, I'll take cabs, but I can eat hawker food like most days. As a mother, I am naturally concerned about what the lives of my 3 children will look like after they enter the workforce and start making their own money. As things get more expensive and credit lines more attainable, this generation of youth is possibly at greater risk of running into debt compared to previous generations. I guess all I can do now is to continue to educate my 3 children about the risks of spending beyond their means.
Good. Yeah, that's great. I mean, yeah, that's exactly as she said. Like, your the generation is facing probably will be called like a pandemic or a crisis at some point, if not already, a debt crisis, right? Because they're gonna be spending far more on average than they make, and yeah, these buy now pay later and credit cards, of course, you can use them both at the same time, because one doesn't affect your credit score. It's gonna be far easier for people to do this, and as again, as prices rise up, it may come to a point where you could never, technically speaking, afford to purchase a certain item up front, but maybe you can afford to pay it. Like, I mean, even with leasing cars now, right? Like a lot of people aren't buying cars up front anymore because, back in the day, you're able to put money forward and maybe even buy that one card up front. But it's being a lot harder to do that. So maybe you put a larger down, but you're still not buying that, brand new car or even like 4 or 5 year old car, up front anymore because it's just too expensive. So that model of paying in segments with interest or even without interest, as that starts to cover, more technology, and as, inflation prices and whatever prices for whatever product it is that people are interested in and believe that they need or want continue to rise at that rate, it's going to be more apparent that people aren't able to purchase things up front, and this will become the staple. There's always the fear monger of the Great Reset, and this whole you'll own nothing and be happy. Now, at least with this, eventually you should own it. But yeah, who's to say it won't come to a point where buy now, pay later is like a rent now, pay always model where maybe you can never afford whatever that item is you want. Maybe it's a really, really, really good phone, really, really, really good computer, or whatever the case is. Or maybe it's a bundle deal of a lot of devices. Oh, wow, I should write this down. Maybe it's a bundle of like a lot of things, and it comes to a point where it's like several $1,000s that you could probably never buy up front, and it'd probably take forever to pay off month by month. And they take advantage of that. So, yeah, be careful here. They know what's up. They know how you think, and even though it seems too good to be true in some cases, usually it always is. So that's all for this one. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you like the video, please like the video. If you dislike the video, dislike the video. I hope that you guys are able to subscribe, comment down below if you have any thoughts about this. Maybe you're watching this from another country. Maybe you're watching this from Singapore. I'd love to know what you think, how buy now, pay later has affected your life, how tempting it is for you, whether you like the philosophy or not, whether you think it's predatory in nature or not. All those things are definitely up for debate, and they're things that I'd love to discuss. Peace.